Oh, great.
Pick it up. Let's keep going.
All right, we'll try to sprint through here. We were corrected by Robert, and we're good there. If you turn to page 20, I hope you use your time to study your notes. But just going on page 20, we do talk about, we had a projected ending fund balance of $3 million for this fiscal year. And by the way, we're getting a heck of a rainstorm here, and if it flashes again, I'll try to watch for the green. But as we look at revenue, we have $5 million from that tax increment. We're working with Greg Travis on a $1 million a year grant to do a storm drain on the north end of the boulevard. We're working on a developer agreement with property owner on the south end, Richmond and Post Oak Boulevard. I'd like to see the reconstruction of a portion of Richmond, and they would provide the funding of $6.5 million to be paid back from incremental growth. That would be brought to the board at a later date as it becomes reality. The Memorial Park Conservancy is contributing $11.5 million toward the land bridge construction, and we're drawing down $10.5 million from our note proceeds for a total of $34.5 million. $37.5 available for capital expenditures. We're projecting a projected ending cash balance of $3 million for this coming year. Okay, there's a bit of phone noise, so if anybody wants to interrupt, just speak loudly and I'll respond. Page 21 takes a look at our capital projects for expending that $34 million. Three areas, core projects, which are capital projects in the core commercial area of Uptown. Regional Transit Project is the nomenclature that we'd use for the construction of the West Loop, Post Oak Boulevard, and West Park Transit Center. And then we have Memorial Park investment of $21.95 million. $32.9 million of actual capital expenditures, another 1.6 to make that 34.5 work is for the staff charges for managing capital projects, and a couple other payments, small payments for developer agreements. On page 22 is presenting our capital. We had to present to the city a 5-year capital improvement program, and a couple of interesting things to note. This is for core projects only. On page 22, you'll see that we have expenditures of $10 million this coming year. The significant portion, the dominant portion, 6.5 on a developer agreement for Richmond Phase 1, and then a grant and project with the City of Houston for 2.5. So you can see how our projects, both in the commercial core, and then following on the next page, page 23, for the transit, we're projecting only $900,000 to be spent this coming fiscal year on the completion of Post Oak Boulevard. But you can see how our programs in those two areas are really declining very quickly. On page 24, you'll see the 5-year capital improvement program for Memorial Park. And you'll see in that at 21, almost $22 million for this year, of which $21.3 million is for the capital infrastructure, primarily the land bridge for the Memorial Park. Noticing over on the right-hand side, we'll be spending almost $81 million on Memorial Park in the next 5 years. On page 25 is our cash summary. Key issue here is beginning and ending cash balances, revenues, and capital expenditures. You can see over the next 5 years we're showing fundable but not excessively fat, workable cash flows. We have been very conservative on any growth in ad valorem tax value, and that is really what's been guiding our thoughts as we put this plan together. Page 26 just to give you a perspective of what the 5-year capital program looks like. Core projects, of which almost just under $10 million of that is a couple projects working with a developer agreement and with the city of Houston, but a total of $15 million. Regional transit's $900,000 for this year, and then in fiscal 22, we would do a final $5 million payment to TxDOT for their construction of the West Loop. And then you can see the significant investment that we're making in Memorial Park. Total of almost $81 million, $102 million over the 5 years in all categories. Next page, on page 27, just to give you some sense of scale on this, we have already invested something like $31 million in Memorial Park, and in the TIRZ alone will invest almost another $45 million over the next 5 years in the park, for a total investment in the park but within that, by the end of that 5-year period, of almost $76 million, which is again, the difference is this is just what the TIRZ is spending. It's not necessarily the $36 million that the Memorial Park Conservancy is contributing through their funding. So, Mr. Chairman, that's a quick run through the second time, and I apologize for not noticing the phone had gone off, but we'd be glad to answer questions. Just real quickly about the process. You authorize us to submit this to the City of Houston. City Council approves it. If it's materially different, we'll bring it back to the Board of Directors for your approval.
Just one question, John, which is, what would the impact be if we had a significant decline in ad valorem tax revenues?
In the 1980s and in the 2008-2010 time frame, we saw as much as a 10% reduction in the ad valorem value in this area. On a $7 billion program, it would have a material impact on our ability to do some of the projects beyond probably the land bridge. It probably has a more significant impact on the management district. But we will be going through those scenarios. But we have gone through enough on our own that we think that that we can implement the land bridge project, even given a downturn in ad valorem value for the Uptown Development Authority. One of the key factors in that is that if you see in the budget, we show $5.5 million going to the City of Houston for municipal services. And the way that agreement is set up, that is a payment after all of our other commitments. And so that is probably the area that would take the brunt of that hit of reduced values.
You know, I get that, but I've also would assume that with the city being in a similar or even more adverse situation with regard to its revenues, should we assume that we can do that? You sure? Should we assume that they're going to continue to want that or more?
In our visits with the City of Houston, and I have asked that explicit question. It is the direction I was given that implementing the Memorial Park project, taking advantage of a $70 million contribution from the Kinder Foundation, would represent a priority for the administration.
So does then that mean that they come back and say, well, you know, you're going to have to cut back your core projects?
There's just hardly anything there to cut. I mean,
I know, I'm just focusing on the next couple of years when there is a little.
and I think that's first of all, out of that $10 million in core projects,
Yeah,
7.5 were from external sources so the mayor might take $3 million.
yeah, no, I recognize it's not only one source of funds.
Literally because of debt service payments and contractual commitments, if he were to take there is so little to take. I just don't see that it doesn't solve his budget.
I hear you, but the point that you may have been making that wasn't really the one I was asking is that we could be tight on our budget.
We are tight. Let me say, we are tight on our budget today.
That's my point. And so, because we do have debt service, which we most assuredly have to meet, and we do have contractual obligations, there's not a lot of, there's no fat. There's just a whole lot of potential. Look, I'm pretty pessimistic about what tax values are going to look like next year, because the appraisal district can say all they want when retail vacancies have soared and restaurants aren't still paying rent. There will be a decline in values of a lot of different kinds of assets.
Steve, and I agree, Mr. Chairman, and I think for this fiscal year, that for 1/1/2020, everything from the state and local, now they may be tied up in lawsuits, but I don't think from policy or elected or agencies, they see 2020 being automatically reduced or any changes. It's 20.
Yeah,
it's
no,
1/1/21.
and I agree with that. So I recognize that if this budget should be okay, is what you're saying, for this year.
Yeah. If I took 10% or $700 million value off of the appraised value on $7 billion, isn't that right?
Okay.
I think that's something less than $3 million. And the municipal services request is 5.5, and we could only make that payment after we paid everything else off, all of our debt, all of our developer agreements, etc. And so,
yeah, and
I think
when I look out there on the 5-year program and see we still got some very large payments on the Memorial Park project, that I get a little concerned about it down the road.
I think that October of 22, building the land bridge, and I, as staff, we are operating on a scenario that we are focused on having the funds to build the land bridge project, and all other projects that we've committed to on a 10-year program. We basically, in developing cash flows, are taking everything else, putting them out at the 10th year, and I'm walking them back into like the 6th year of our 5-year CIP. We think that we are extremely limited. We think the environment that we're all in, it makes it even more restricted, but we believe that we can fund the land bridge project by October of 2022. And we pray that after that, that the economy will have improved. And I'm just saying that $5.5 million City of Houston service fee is where is the cushion that we have. I mean,
John, I get you. I understand. I just want to make sure that you confirmed that you really thought through this in detail, which I fully expected, but I think we all just wanted to hear that.
I think that all of us, board and staff, understand that this is the tightest, the most difficult budgeting process that we've gone through. And if you will look at, those core projects, and, the question is, we aren't going to be building a $250 million transit project in the next few years. And our organization will probably change, and some other things will happen. So anyway, we appreciate your concerns, and we share those concerns.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions about the budget? Do I have a motion to approve the budget?
Well, sorry, Carmen, so because the initial numbers were wrong, then does anything along the line change as well? Because if we're approving something, then those numbers have to be correct, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so John, what number is, because it doesn't look like you changed the bottom line numbers, so what is the deal? Fair question.
What page are we on?
All right, what would you tell me what page you're looking at?
19.
Are we on 19?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. You guys, totally, we blanked out when we were going through that scenario. But no, it's just a miscalculation in terms of how it's presented. We do have over $50.5 million in gross revenues that we receive from both the city and the school district. When you add up all of the money that we give away, the 5.9 to HISD, the 15.5 back to the city to affordable housing, the 1.6 in administrative fee, and the 5.5 in a municipal services fee, which was what John was speaking on, that's $28.5 million, and you $28.5 million plus mine plus the 50.5, and so the balance left over, I think what's really going on is that we probably should have added another line, because that 28.5 is the subtotal of all of the things we have left over, the for debt service, and then when you subtract it, it leaves 22 million. So 50.5 from 28.5 is $22 million that we have as a development authority before we pay our debt service. Then we pay debt service of $17 million,
Got it.
and it's $5 million. So we kind of did too many things and then left something out. So if the 50 minus the 28.5 is 22, and then you subtract 17 from 22 and you get $5 million. So those numbers, while they were not displayed correctly, they do add up. And the $5 million is what John was talking about. After all of that, that's what we have left to build projects on. And so that's when you go to page 20, you start with a beginning fund balance from the end of this fiscal year, add the $5 million that we just ran through and all of the other sources of revenue. And so all of the numbers are correct there. And again, our apologies for that miscalculation.
So the
Good explanation.
Yeah, it's a graph, but we actually probably made a mistake putting the slide together.
And again,
No
John was talking about that 5.5 that we've been giving the city municipal services fee. When the crunch comes to it, that's, that money would be, help to bridge the gap.
If the city agrees, but the city has to agree to that.
No,
They already have agreed.
we have a contract.
contract.
We have a contract agreement with them, which the city could. But look, that you can't get blood out of a turnip, right? And so the point being is that's a contractual number, and it says it gets in line, and it's the last thing that gets paid.
Okay.
And
Well, that's helpful.
And actually, we have fallen into that category before,
The city has honored.
and
the
the city
contract.
has accepted it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's terrific. I do feel better knowing that. I did not realize that. That's terrific. Okay, so let's go back. Do we have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 budget? Okay, second.
I think Dot spoke up.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. So now we're going to go to the Memorial Park Land Bridge change orders.
Okay. If you would turn to page 28, and I just want to give a quick review of the Memorial Park project. You can see soft costs, construction costs that we're working toward is $54 million, and with contingencies, owner contingency, total project budget of $70,400,000. The reason why I bring this up, if you turn to page 29, that this board of directors, the Uptown Development Authority, awarded a $54 million contract to Tellupson November 6, 2019, as the construction manager at risk to actually build the land bridge project. At that time, they asked for $20,000 in the notice to proceed for pre-construction engineering services, and that was also approved. Since that time, and the third bullet there, Tellupson has taken bids for the foundations for the tunnel arches, for the arches themselves, and for the culverts. That bid was received March 10th, 2020. Other bids are being taken that we should receive by early June, June 3rd. And once we have all of those bids together, both the arches and everything else, we would be in a position to negotiate the guaranteed max price contract and present it to the board on June 24th. That could slide one way or the other, given prices, how things come in, how the negotiations go. But it is our intent to bring that to the June 24th board. That would allow a construction, the completion of the project in October of 22. All along, it was our intent to get the tunnel arch bids in early, because that is the longest lead item for getting things constructed and completing the project, and so that's why that was done in March. If I could get you to turn to page 30, we received those bids March 10. Tricon Precast, which just happens to be an MBE firm, and that's Mr. Chairman, what I was suggesting, that our construction MBE will be coming up in the future, submitted the lowest bid. In fact, it was $2.8 million under the estimate for arches, foundations, and for head walls. Staff and the construction manager, Tellupson, reviewed the bids extensively. It was determined that, in fact, we thought we had a good bid, that the contractor could bid and make money on that project. We felt that they were capable of producing high-quality product. We saw that physically. We looked at their facilities, and very impressive, significant project here in Houston, the manufacturing site. And in fact, they could save a lot of money because it is just below the North Belt between I-45 and 59 here in Houston. And so we felt the recommendation was to move forward with awarding that contract to Tricon. The significant things have to happen to get that process going. And you turn to page 31, that we need them to be able to, in order to maintain the schedule, that we will fund Tricon's precast engineering at $150,000. We will fund their purchase of a performance bond of $189,000, and then some change there to Tellupson and insurances for a total change order of $359,000. This is really not a change order. We've used this term. You have awarded a $54 million contract to Tellupson. We're simply asking you to authorize the release of additional $359,000 to Tellefson and Tricon so that we can basically do shop drawings and do the final engineering so that we can award we can get all that work going while we are coming up on the guaranteed max price that would be June 24th or so. And I simply add in here that we are also asking for an additional $43 million to be released. 43 million. Yeah, excuse me. Thank you. $43,000 to be released for the engineering work on the culverts, and we would have had those two together, but administratively we're just a couple days behind in making that happen. On page 33, you see that we have currently authorized $20,000. We're asking you to authorize an additional $39,000 and an additional $43,000 for a total of $422,000. That will all be a part of the guaranteed max price that we'll be asking you to award upon the successful negotiations in late June. And then the last thing, just turning to page 34, to give you some insight of where we're going and where all this fits together. We intend to get all the other bids, landscaping, lighting, all the other pieces, utility work in by June 3rd. Hope to bring that guaranteed max price negotiated contract between Tellefson and the district to you on June 24th. Given Tellefson a notice to proceed on June 29. They would move on site in July, and we would see Memorial Drive rerouted by September of 2020. That we would begin work on foundations immediately, and by the time we get to January, our Tricon would have fabricated enough tunnel sections to move forward, and we would have the tunnel arches in place and covered in soil, and Memorial Drive reopened to traffic going through one of the tunnels by September of 2021. Planting of the prairie would begin in October that year, with again the project being completed in October of 2022. So I know it's a lot to bring into a phone conversation on a board package, but the action is asking you to approve 2 change orders totaling, as soon as I find it back in my presentation, totaling $422,689.
John, I have a question. When you say that in your little footnote that the amount of these change orders will be included in the GMP, do you mean that the numbers that we already have will be increased by this amount, or are you saying that this amount will be covered, for example, in Tellefson's and the precaster contract already? In other words, is this an increase, or is it just a different way of accounting for it?
It is not an increase. It's an allocation of funds in the $54 million that would have to be spent, and we're simply asking your authorization to spend them now to be able to do the engineering, to do the precast work, so that we can meet the schedule that we've laid out to you. We do
so it's
not,
more of an advance than anything else.
That's
Absolutely.
correct. The change orders are an administrative vehicle to allow us to spend some money before the award of the GMP.
and yes. $54 million.
John, are you comfortable? Are you comfortable that that will not have any problem meeting the $54 million?
Mr. Chairman, the answer is we have made significant progress in getting to that $54 million with this excellent bid that we got out of Tricon. We are probably not totally there, but we feel like that the market that we're in is going to hopefully yield some pretty tight bids coming in on June 3rd. And we do have contingency, which is the first slide that I went over. Turning back to page 28, I believe, you can see that we think we have, at least another $4.4 million worth of contingency in there. It is staff in Tellupson's estimate, projection, gut feel that we're going to get to this 54, not only because of competitive bids, but we also are bidding in such a manner that we can pull some $2 million out of this project if we absolutely have to. We've got an item budgeted at $2 million, which is what we would call artistic lighting of the interior of the tunnels, which is optional. And so with the contingencies and the ability to get another $2 million out, and there are other places, we think we can manage to the $54 million. And I'm looking at Andrew across the table. He's shaking his head yes. And I think, Louis, you've sat in enough subcommittee meetings that that's generally where I think the entire team is.
Yeah, I think that's true, John. And I would also just say that when Tricon came in $2.8 million low, not surprisingly, everybody said, this is too good to be true. And so the entire team has spent an enormous amount of time checking on Tricon, their bonding ability, et cetera. John played a major leadership role in that, and so although he's not guaranteeing that as a final price, I think it is fair to recognize him and the team for spending really a lot of time on ensuring that this savings was not or this lower price was not a myth. And I think everybody involved at this point feels like it's doable.
Well, good. And, the fact of the matter is that Tellupson is underwriting Tricon.
Right.
They're responsible for, Tellupson is they're a very responsible group, so that gives me a lot of confidence as well. Having said all that, do we have a motion to approve change orders number 1 and number 2?
This is Lisa. I approve, or make a motion, excuse me.
This is Mary Carmen. I second. Oh.
Okay, great. Motion second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?